Yes, I believe we have members of the public waiting, and it would be appropriate to admit them or make the meeting available to them at this point, General Manager Mallon.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
And so in the meantime, while they're all coming in, we will go to item 1, and I request an amendment to the agenda under item 6 to address an interim administrative arrangement due to the receipt of the general manager's resignation. I will ask Mr. Nevis, our attorney, to provide us with guidance on this action.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It came to our attention last night after the posting of this month's meeting agenda last Friday that the general manager has tendered his resignation from his position with the district. It is necessary for the district to take some immediate action to plan for interim management of the district between today and the end of Mr. Mallon's tenure, which will be effective April 2nd. So under the Brown Act, the district board is allowed to add an item to the agenda and discuss and provide direction in those situations where a matter has come up after the posting of the agenda that needs an immediate decision, an immediate action. So the request this evening would be consistent with that, to add an item after number 6. So this would be item 6.5 that would allow the board to address some direction to staff to take interim measures to plan for management of the district. And you can have a discussion, you can make an appropriate motion, and then there should be a roll call vote. If the board votes by 2/3 of the members, that would pass and the item could be discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Nevis. So we will need a 2/3 vote, with the number being 4 votes here for this board. And so we will need every vote to be able to add item 6.5 to the agenda. And with that, I will ask a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Trustee Alcala moved and Trustee Ledesma seconds. Mr. General Manager, can you please call the roll?
Yes, President Guerrero,
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma,
Aye.
Trustee Orozco, Trustee Alcala,
Aye.
And the motion is approved, and we will add item 6.5 for further discussion of our management situation. And next item is item number 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. And we will allow members to speak for 3 minutes. We will give during the 30-second time, we will give you a warning that that your 3 minutes is almost up. So we would ask you to wrap up your comment at that point. And, we will ask, Lexi, if we need a hand raised so that we can recognize you here for today's meeting. And I will take care of recognizing you and unmuting you, and then I will mute you after the 3 minutes is, or actually Mr. Mallon will mute you back after the 3 minutes is up. So who at this point would like to speak under public comment? Okay, so David and Heather is what I see on your Zoom notification there.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, board, for allowing to speak real quick here. We are commenting on the Blacker Canal bank stabilization project. I think most of you have received a letter that we submitted as part of the mitigated negative declaration public comment period, and so I know most of you, hopefully have been able to read through the letter. So we're not here to read through what's here. We just wanted to speak in person how first we understand the need for the project. We understand that ultimately we'll go forward. We just want to again express our concerns about the impacts to the wildlife that's out in the canal. We have seen over 80 species of animals, mostly birds, some that are special status. And we just hope that the project will take into consideration impacts to wildlife and try to minimize those impacts, both in the near term and the long term. And we really would like to thank Tim for he came out and visited with us after we received the notice in the mail about the project and explained to us the project, listened to our concerns. So we really would like to thank Tim. And we hope that the new general manager going forward, or whoever is managing the district and managing the project, will continue to keep us in the loop and keep us informed on the parts of the project. And we would like to reiterate that we would love to continue to collaborate with the district. We would like this, hopefully, to be a partnership to just make sure that the project goes well, both from what's actually needed and also for the impacts to wildlife. So that's really why we just came here today. Thank you again for hearing us. And yeah.
I'd like to go to thank you again for having us. One other issue that some of the neighbors raised, David and I haven't lived here for very long, but some of the neighbors have been here for longer than 25 years. And over the years, especially in the summer months, the water levels in the canal get really low. I've heard this has been brought up multiple times before, but we just want to reiterate that our hope going forward with this project is that to the extent practicable, the water level can be maintained at a level that won't drive out lots of wildlife. And then after the project is completed, if there was a way that the different departments within the city could work together on a plan to maintain a minimum water level, to maintain and even improve habitat as much as possible, that's something that we're requesting in the long term. So I think that's all we had. Thank you again.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Any other requests for public comment? And I don't see any. We'll then move on to item number 3, which is the consent calendar, which is to approve the minutes. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And Trustee Orozco moved,
Second.
and Alcala seconds. And Mr. General Manager, can you please call the roll?
Yes. President Guerrero,
Aye.
Trustee Alcala,
Aye.
Trustee Orozco,
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma,
Aye.
Okay, this motion is approved. Next, we'll move to item number 4, the district financial update. Mr. General Manager.
yes. Just a second. At this time, there is no significant expenditures to report. We have our usual monthly costs, our administration or payroll, taxes, so forth. There was no major movements on any of the accounts. So, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up again here. There we go. One of the things that's working through at the moment is properly establishing still that RD 537 sub account. We realized this last month we had some property tax income that came in for that account that got moved into the RD 900 account. So we're working with the county to have that properly reallocated. It's a pretty minor adjustment, minor fix. As far as funding agreements or anything of that nature, no big movements. We're still awaiting what's going to happen with this Black Canal project and getting the final FEMA agreement in place after all the environmental processing and permits are done. We've only expended a very minor amount in the RR&R category. We had our first expenditures for the building remodel process, minor. It was just the demolition process undergoing, and the initial billing from the contractor for initiating their plan check reviews and bonding and permitting. But those are categories we'll see at least in the building remodel, significant costs incurred in the next few months. And then thereafter, with the Blacker Canal project moving forward, we would see significant costs in RR&R as well. Anyways, are there any questions from the board?
I do have a question related to administrative and where it says 5,000 administrative, it says 81,700. So that is a 69% remaining in the budget. Is that because of a position that has not been filled, or is there another reason for that?
As the budget was presented, I'm actually looking at this report now and seeing that 69% is actually incorrect. It's 69% of the budget has been expended.
Been expended. Okay.
Been expended. So what you're seeing there with the 81,700 is how much is remaining at the current rate of expenditure for administration. We currently do not have any room in the budget for an expansion of administration. It was allocated in the current fiscal year budget to have the positions that are in place and the expenditures as we have them. So it will be essentially 100% expended given the current trajectory.
I see. Okay.
That being said, in years past, that line item has been larger. As some of you may know, our structure in the past had both a general manager and an assistant general manager. And so there was a significantly larger administrative budget. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions among the trustees? No questions? Okay. Hey, open it up for public comment. Any requests for public comment? Okay, close the public comment and we'll bring it back for further discussion. And if not, we'll accept a motion to adopt this update.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Alcala moves and Trustee Ledesma seconds. And Mr. General Manager, can you please call the roll?
Yes, President Guerrero,
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma,
Aye.
Trustee Alcala,
Aye.
Trustee Orozco,
Aye.
Okay, so next item is under item 5. We have the 2019 audit presentation by Ms. Proper.
Yes.
And you're up.
Okay, and it's actually the 2020 that I'm.
Oh, sorry, 2020. Okay.
That's okay. But just to clarify that.
Okay.
I think we sent out. Let me know if this hasn't happened, but we had 2 documents that everyone should have. One is the basic audit of the financial statements, and the other is the single audit. We're issuing those separately. For various reasons. So hopefully you've got those. I'll take it through at a high level, but I'm happy to talk through anything at a more detailed level or answer any questions that you've got. But the bottom line is your basic financial statements have a clean audit opinion, unmodified opinion attached to them. You will see, if you look closely, you'll see that we've got a prior period adjustment restating the beginning net balance. In both the government-wide, that was around, let me see if I can remember, $700 and some odd thousand. That wasn't insignificant. And that related primarily to the Department of Water Resources grant that was, it wasn't really billed. I guess you could call it billed, right, Tim? It went, the prior general manager issued a letter to the Department of Water Resources as a bill, but it never went through the accounting system. It didn't go through a form. And so it never hit the books. And Tim's had quite a time just trying to kind of piece together the various elements of the accounting for the last couple of years. But anyway, so once we realized that there were some large prior period adjustments, we also lumped in some GASB 31 adjustments were mark to market. The county had never given any mark to market adjustments to your pooled investments. They did so about 5 months after fiscal 19 was over for 19, and then they did it again for 20. So you've got about $82,000 that they've begun to carry of accumulated unrealized gains, which is a good thing to have. All of these are actually in your favor. Nevertheless, they're significant to the bottom line. And then we also accrued a couple $100,000 with regard to the Cal OES FEMA work that was done last year that was not billed yet, but the costs had been incurred. So, and then we had about 18, I'd say about 18 audit adjustments this year. A lot of them were related to some of the cost reimbursement grants. I think the district this year and last year were really the first years that they've had these kinds of grants and didn't really have the accounting structure around that, no policies and procedures around it. But with Tim and also with Dustin's help, the outside CPA, I think they're getting processes in place. I think that this has been a real learning experience, if I could speak for them. Let's see. When you have those kinds of adjustments and the magnitude of the adjustments that you have, you also have internal control implications. And so you'll see we touched on those in the single audit document. So the GAGAS, the Government Auditing Standards Audit Opinion, and also the audit opinion under uniform guidance exist in the single audit document. And what's required there is to talk about any improvements in internal control that can be made, or if there's any compliance violations. We didn't find any problems with compliance, just on the internal control side for financial statements. And we've talked to Tim about a couple of these, and I think he's getting things in hand or thinking these things through. One is with regard to segregation of duties. And actually this issue arose because in the past, the board took on a lot of the oversight duties and the authorization duties, but with the transition on the board, the same duties were not being performed by the board that were performed last year. And so the accounting staff really isn't, and even with Tim, not big enough to really separate all of those. And so that's an issue to be worked out. I know the corrective action plan has to be issued before we can issue the financial statements. We have to include it in the single audit. But just to kind of give a little bit more granularity to that, and this is not Tim's fault at all, but he had the ability to get into the accounting system and make adjustments. And he's also signing checks, and he was also authorizing all the payments, right? So it's kind of key to the kingdom, and you don't want any of your staff really put in that position. So you've got to separate those out somehow. And then there are similar issues with regard to journal entries, because no one should be able to go in and put a journal entry through without some oversight. With regard to balance sheet reconciliations, same thing. Anybody who's doing the reconciliations and so on should not, somebody should come behind them and signing off on those reconciliations and the statements and all of that. So you've got to kind of build in some of these internal controls, the key controls. And I would say also to document your policies and procedures, not only on the financial side, but on the compliance side for your grants. That's actually a requirement under the uniform guidance. So, so that was one of the recommendations that we had. Also had some recommendations. It was actually a follow-on to last year about the grant accounting. And then as a follow-on from prior year, we had a comment on just documenting the policies and procedures and so on. So I would probably recommend as well, this isn't a material weakness or a significant deficiency, so it's not documented in the GAGAS report. But while you're putting all of these controls in place, I think it's a good idea to also put something in place to follow up on the deficiencies in the corrective action plan, so that the board can kind of see, okay, this is our plan. Are we making progress? Did we remediate any issues that we have, and so on, so that you don't have kind of the same little issues kind of showing up year in and year out. Some of these are they're intractable issues, really, with how small you are. So I think there's got to be some creativity on how you're going to resolve them. But anyway, we can give our opinion on that, but ultimately we're not allowed to weigh in on the corrective action plan. But we're happy to be there as with Tim or the board or whoever, if you want to talk to us about how we see other organizations kind of solving some of these problems. So anyway, those are the majority. I think most of the adjustments, if you kind of had some of those oversight, segregation of duties issues resolved, I think the number of adjustments will go down. And actually, Dustin's done a good job. He's just getting to know the organization. So I would rather imagine that he'll be able to take this year's adjustments that he's now reconciling and figuring out how he can reduce the number of adjustments on the books and records. So any questions for me? I'm happy to kind of go. There weren't any new accounting pronouncements this year of note. Most of the report is fairly similar from last year. We did do a single year presentation though because of the prior period adjustment. So.
Thank you, Ms. Cropper. Are there any questions among the trustees? Trustee Alcala?
I'm just wondering, how long had the prior procedural practices been in place?
With the board?
The procedures they had done were, as far as recollection, is how prior it was. We had them as a double signature and text, so we had the president, vice president both as optional signatories. We also had a monthly presentation of our financials that went down to the detail of presenting check registers and having them signed off. Bank statements, monthly statements from the county treasury were signed off. This was done as far back as I can find records.
Okay, Tim, thank you. I'm new to the board, so I'm going to be sometimes asking questions just simply because I don't know. And do we have any, are there any consequences of not having had our ducks lined up in a row that we may be looking at?
Are you talking about fraud? Well, we didn't find any fraud. However, it could have happened because the controls weren't in place, right? And so you have different controls. Some controls are preventive controls that will stop a fraud happening, and some are detective controls that will find it in the course of really doing your assigned duties. And so, these are the kind of holes that are serious, but you've got honest staff and earnest, and so we didn't have any problem. And we did do a very detailed audit because of that. We have to change our approach and change our materiality when we see a material weakness. So we got into a lot of the detail, but I think it was necessary. So we're fairly confident about that, but you'll never see an auditor put that in writing because we're not allowed to, right? So, but anyway, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I will just probably say one more thing. I mean, a lot of organizations do try to separate duties, but they give authorization to individuals who really don't know the projects that are going on. They don't, they're not familiar. And so really just because they're authorizing it doesn't make it meaningful. And so a lot of organizations, when they're undergoing large engineering projects like this, will hire a large engineering firm to be the project managers and authorize some of those, a lot of that, and to manage the grant, because it's really hard for the general manager without adding staff to take all this on, right? In addition to a lot of the administrative controls that he wasn't doing before. So anyway, I've just seen Larson Wurzel, there's a lot of those firms that will kind of do that kind of work. So it's just an option. It's just an option. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions among the trustees? Okay, go ahead. Trustee Ledesma, do you have a question?
No, I just want to appreciate you bringing this back to us. I know you were here the last meeting and you've been looking into this, and we're trying to reconcile a few things before bringing it back.
Yeah.
So thank you for kind of bringing these to our attention. I know Tim's done an admirable job, and he's an honest general manager. So
yeah.
We've been trying to understand kind of what the processes were coming into this. So this has certainly provided us a roadmap of where we put in the infrastructure and processes and controls that we're going to need going forward. So
Yeah.
just appreciate it.
I
Yeah.
will just kind of insert as you're talking. I think, Kim, you said for a while there, they had an assistant general manager, right? I think you were
Mhm.
one at one point. Tony
Correct.
kind of functioned that way. He was the foreman, but he also did the books at one point. And, you know, they've had different iterations depending on who's been in there, but they've always had a lot of adjustments because they haven't really had an accountant in there. But now that they've got Dustin, I rather imagine that things will be fairly clean going forward, because he'll do all of that, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I know that was one of the first things Tim asked for, was to bring Dustin in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, just because of this exact issue is having somebody with a financial accounting background.
Yeah.
Well, and also having somebody on the outside of the financial background
Mhm.
that's
right.
looking in on everything.
Right.
Yeah, because I can help and but I have to be independent, right? So that's a challenge.
No, and I appreciate the position you're taking, because we have some work to do, obviously, and we're going to have to put in a plan and figure out how these procedures are best going to work and coordinate with a few other agencies that work with us. But again, we're going to need somebody from the outside making sure that they can provide some credible challenge to whatever kind of processes and controls we have. That's the important part, because we've got to get this right.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate this audit exposed just kind of it, but it's necessary. That's what it's there for.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the only other thing, kind of off topic, but the single audit's due by March 31st. And pending your approval, we can issue. However, we have to have the corrective action plan to do that. That's one of the requirements. So, and some of these issues probably have to be left fairly generic in order to get that in on time, I think. Because probably put a whole plan together by the 31st, right?
March 31st of this year?
Yeah. I know, exactly. I'm just putting it out there. But I've seen all sorts of different corrective action plans. One is just, we acknowledge this is an issue and we'll be working on it. We'll have it done by this date. You know, you don't have to have it all laid out by March 31st, but
there's an art to writing corrective actions. Yeah. And I think because of I think this is as we go into this week, which we have a new agenda item that we're have to plan for. But we may ask for help again to as we draft whatever corrective actions around it, just to ensure that we're meeting the requirements, but also giving ourselves enough room to change plans, because that's usually what happens is you write them with what you know today and what you've learned today, but you may learn something down the line but you're kind of pegged into that corrective action.
You don't want to do that. You
correct.
want to be fairly generous with yourself. So this is the first single audit it's submitted, so they're not going to be looking at prior comments and all of that. You're starting fresh, which is really good. And no matter what's in there, it takes them months to get back to you. So you can probably have these resolved by the time they would ever get back to you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Cropper. And thank you for letting us know about the timing. I was going to ask you when you needed to have that response by, and it seems like you may need a response back with the general language by tonight in order to be able to.
No, it needs to be written on your letterhead, kind of officially, and it goes in this last page. So yeah, you've got a week or week and a half. We don't have to put it in until right at the very end. So
do we need to take some kind of action on that tonight in order for us to approve that?
Not necessarily. You might be able to circulate it and get everybody to vote on it just outside of the meeting. I don't know if that meets your protocols though, but I've seen that happen. Is it? So Ralph, you might be able to weigh in on that. Is that allowed?
That isn't my understanding.
But
No, we can't do that, but what we can do probably is work with staff or maybe one member of the board along with General Manager Mallon. I'm happy to help to get together and put together that corrective action plan. And then we can bring it back to the board before the 31st to the extent we have a meeting. If not, if the general manager is authorized to issue the corrective action letter, we could do that and then ratify it at our next board meeting at our next regular board meeting as well.
Yeah, I can't recommend not meeting the deadline, but there are no repercussions if you do not. Okay, other than next year being considered a high risk audit, which was this year because you don't have any history. So they don't have any monetary fines or anything. It's not like the IRS. So it is an option if you are a few weeks late.
I prefer not to be a few weeks late, but I think we do have a plan to reconvene, which will be discussed at a later time in the agenda. And given that, I think what I'd like to do is work with Mr. Mellon and Mr. Nevis on some language for the letter and bring it back for the trustees to review and approve at that next meeting. I think that'll give you enough time for in the letter. Okay.
All we got to do is attach it, actually. That's all we do. So, and you'll see language in there that we don't give an opinion on your plan, right? We're Switzerland on that. So, but if you have questions for me as you put it together, just call me. That's no problem.
Ms. Cropper, I do have a question though. Audits are done on a regular basis, right? And so, just looking forward, in the future, in preparation for our next audit preparation, what do you recommend for us to do in addition to this so that we have some consistency in the evaluation of the process?
Yeah, well, I document your policies and your financial policies and procedures and also your compliance policies and procedures. I get those down so that everybody's in agreement as to what should happen. And then once you know what should happen, then you can put it in job descriptions and drill down a little further. Dustin and Tim too, they, whatever's decided that, they'll make it happen. They'll make it happen. But you also need to kind of know whether your staffing needs need to change. So, and that's a question. Once you know what has to happen, you have to look at the competencies and the number of staff you have and figure out whether what you have is what you need.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree. And, in looking at the past process where it was either the president and the vice president who also was like a co-signer on whether it be checks, do you know what happened in between that past board and the present board? I was, as far as that process, did it get modified or, so it just seemed.
Yeah, I just think it didn't evolve. It just disappeared, that control.
I can actually answer that. That was the request of our former president that not continue after our first couple board meetings.
Okay.
And instead receive just very high level reports of our financial interactions.
I see.
And we audit a lot of other special districts, and in nearly every case, the board does do a lot of, they might not do dual signatures because quite frankly, the banks don't look at that much, but some of the compensating controls would be printing out all the checks that month and having the board sign that list, reviewing it and signing it. You don't have to actually, sign every check to get some of those controls in place. Journal entries are another one. If you're going to have fraud, if I were going to do a fraud, I'd do it through journal entry because it's more of an art. There's a lot of ways to commit fraud, whether they be asset misappropriation or just financial statement misstatements. So you need to put those policies and procedures in place first. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely need to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Ms. Cropper. You did a great job in helping us understand what we need to do moving forward.
Thank you.
And appreciate all the work you've done, Mr. Mellon, on providing all the transparency and giving us the guidance for the accountability and oversight of RD 900. It's a big burden on your shoulders. So, and appreciate all the work you've done to make this happen. And, having to go through the books and providing us with the information. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cropper.
Thank you, Martha.
And call me anytime if you, any questions. I'm here and we'll be in touch. I'm going to be working with the city to get these financials consolidated into yours. So we have one more step to go. Yeah. All right.
In consideration of that step, do they need that? So we're looking at maybe a meeting next week sometime. Would that be enough time to consolidate it with the city's?
Yeah, they've had the numbers for a while. So I think they've been working on it. So anyway, but if they have any questions, I know they're going through the process. So, but they have the numbers.
Okay, great.
Great. All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marianne.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Tim.
All right, next item is item 6.
I just want to ask, do we need to make a motion and to accept?
We need to accept it. Oh, sorry. So do we need to accept it with the potential for an amendment in the future? I mean, so no, we don't. Mr.
No,
Nevis?
I believe the only thing outstanding now is, correct me, Ralph, if I'm wrong, but is accepting it, but then also with the authority to move forward with issuing a letter for corrective actions.
Along with that's correct. Along with the authority to prepare a corrective action plan and bring it back to the board for final approval.
Perfect. And I'll accept a motion for approving that action.
So moved.
Trustee
I'll
Orozco
second.
and Trustee Ledesma seconds. Mr. General Manager, please call the roll.
Yeah. President Guerrero.
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma.
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Trustee Orozco.
Aye.
The motion is approved. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is discussion of completing funding of OPEB liability. Mr. Manager.
Yes, so this is something that's been underway for a number of years. I wrote you a little synopsis here, the events that have transpired to get to this point. This all started a number of years ago with setting aside this $135,400 to within the county treasury account in order to assist in the funding of OPEB liability. In 2008, we contracted with Total Compensation Systems, and they produced an initial report of the liabilities through some iterations and steps and changes in assumptions. They came to a number that was agreed upon in the resolution I provided you to fund the liability of $383,986, inclusive of that first $135,400. The catch there was it was not allocated in the budget for that entire amount. Only the $135,400 was approved in the 1920 budget, and based on the OPEB report dated for June of 2019. There was an assumption that it would be $140,000 to $145,000 to finalize that funding, which is what I placed in the budget for this current fiscal year. But based on the report that came out with changes assumptions, who's retired, market conditions and everything, that number has adjusted itself to the net liability that is outstanding at the moment is $194,000, which is more than what is allocated in the budget, and moving that amount of money would exceed what is allotted in our approved budget. So the question here, although the board has approved the previous actions funding this liability in its entirety, the steps to integrate that into our budget have not been in line with that exact number, partially because this is a moving target. Who we have employed or turnover, everything else, and market conditions. So what I'm seeking from the board is if you're willing tonight, is to discuss whether to complete that funding and for this 194,000 of liability that's shown as outstanding as of June of 2020, whether to move forward with allocating what was approved in the budget, which is about 140,000, 245,000, or whether to reassess at a later date the completion of the funding of our OPEB liability. As all of you may know, completing this funding, this vested amount is invested at a market rate. It is much more favorable than anything we're going to get through the county accounts. So it helps to offset our future liabilities and secure financial stability for the district. So at this point, I would open this up for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Are there any comments or questions? Trustee? Trustee Orozco, do you have no? Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Sorry, no, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. I can't. I just saw your mic was off. So, Trustee Alcala.
So Tim, so are you going to ask us? I'm sorry. Are you going to ask us to make a motion?
To recommend the amount.
Yeah, recommend the amount. That's in my report. Yes, which would. Like I said, this is always a moving target. Every time you do run one of these reports based on market changes, performance, assumptions, turnover, it changes. But this would, as of the last report, solidify the district in being fully funded for their liabilities.
All right, thank you.
And I will state, if you look through that report, I believe it's page 13, the vast majority of that liability is based on people who are retired, who are for sure liabilities at this point. Because you have to have 20 years of service and retire at 60 years old, and almost the entirety of the staff is in their 30s or is too old in order to attain those levels. That's where virtually all the liability is already there. It's already realized.
Thank you. Page 13 of the report is what you said.
Yeah, I believe that's the correct page.
Of the Total Compensation Systems Inc. report?
Yes. Page 12, I apologize.
Okay.
And page 11, where it shows active pre and post retiree liability is 41,000 of this total. It's a very minor piece of it. The majority of it is are inactive.
So since it's a moving target as far as the net OPEB liabilities you referenced, is there a way to just say, recommend the maximum amount, which would be maybe 194, give or take a few dollars? Is that a way to account for making sure we just give the maximum amount, the maximum payment?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the performance and how the audit will come out this coming year, but I think that's a conservative number because, as many of you know, this last year, the beginning of this last year, performance lagged significantly, which is reflective in this report, and the liability increasing, and it increased significantly at the tail end of the year up till now. So the balance in that count at the moment is over 150,000 in our trust.
I see. The balance is 150, so
instead of that 139 that's reflected in there. But again, this 194,000 is the best guess we can get from an actual report, something that that has a foundation, has a solidified number. The other option would be the wait and see, which is at this point, wait until this coming June, after things have kind of had the chance to go up and down, and produce another actuarial report and solidify, a different number, which potentially will be lower.
Okay,
Well, it could be higher, correct? Or we
It
just
could be,
won't know?
it could be higher.
It
So we
likely
could-
will be, I mean,
Right.
it likely will be higher.
Hmm.
Because of usually the performance and the cost of it will lag for the city later or for the district later.
Correct.
That's what you're saying, Tim, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could go either way. I mean, right now it's been, the account itself, as far as returns, has been performing significantly better, rather than the losses it experienced in the initial months
Mhm.
of 2009 or 2020. It's experienced significant gains. So that would, and we haven't seen massive increases in the costs at this point. So that would lead me to believe that it would be a lowered amount. But again, like you said, you never know what the market will do. And this will be a moving target. This would be something to reassess on a very regular basis, or, relatively regular basis, I should say.
mhm. All right. That's just,
Um,
yeah. Any recommendations among the trustees?
I would go with Tim's recommendation.
I'm actually in line with that as well.
Okay, and do we need to take action on this, Tim?
I believe so, because what this is asking is also an adjustment to the budget amount. So we're acknowledging that we will be exceeding that line item in the budget with this action.
Well, let's accept a motion for Tim's recommendation.
I'm sorry, President Guerrero, did you repeat that?
So I think trustee Alcala suggested Tim's recommendation. And trustee Orozco seconded that, but I need a motion to accept that recommendation.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second.
Okay, trustee Ledesma seconds. General manager, please call the roll.
Yes, President Guerrero,
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma,
Aye.
Trustee Orozco,
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Okay,
you.
next, thank you. Next is item 6.5, which is a discussion about next steps. You've accepted the general manager's resignation and hand it over, Lexi, to Mr. Mellon to explain to us what we need to do next. What is it we need to address the situation?
So yes, and I'm going to ask to refer to Ralph here too, to see if this is a discussion I should be leading or yourself. I have been in coordination with Ralph and Martha and members of West Safeco to discuss the steps for moving forward and properly creating a structure to support the district in the interim prior to the selection of a replacement for myself. As part of that, there have been discussions about agreements to be in place between West Safeco and RD 900, which would facilitate using staff from West Safeco to assist in the administration of the district and help to perform day-to-day administrative activities, as well as conversations regarding how to go about creating a selection process for my replacement.
Thank you.
Ralph, at this point,
I think what we need is some guidance on next steps, and I think there's still some work remaining to make a decision about this that may require us to call a special meeting next week to have the board approve these recommendations. And can you give us some guidance on that, please? Ralph?
Sure. I think tonight, what we need to do, I would request that the board do is focus on providing some direction to Mr. Mallon and me to attempt to come up with options for the board to consider at a upcoming special meeting to provide for that for interim management of the district pending a decision of this board on whether or not to go out to an RFP, engage in an executive search to hire a permanent general manager. The process, we have a couple weeks before Mr. Mallon's resignation takes effect. It would be very helpful if we decide to go the direction of some kind of administrative services agreement with personnel, so that personnel from the city could provide general manager services on an interim basis. That's one option. And over the next week, as we head toward a potential special meeting, what I would propose is that we explore that option with the city attorney, city manager's office, and also any other options that the board would like to consider, have considered to provide support during this interim period prior to bringing on a general manager full time. So that's the tenor of the direction we need, is just authority to move forward to do those things, to carry that out so that we can provide good advice and options to the board at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Nevis. And bring it back at, for discussion, but also a recommendation for a subcommittee to meet and take a look at some recommendations to bring back to the board. And that's something that I think can help us narrow down what the, what options we can consider for discussion at a meeting next week. Trustee Ledesma? You're breaking up a lot. I don't know what happened. No, you're like muted.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Sorry, my headset was probably dying from the day. I think that was your cue to give me the short stick to be on help with the.
That is my cue.
This is first of all, Tim, thank you for your service, and I understand your personal reasons for your resignation, and want to make sure you have the support you need to close out yourself. So I think that's item one, I would say, and appreciate your kind of work through the pandemic and everything the last year, keeping things running. But I know Martha is probably calling upon me because we had a similar situation in another small district agency 9 years ago. So there is some. I will volunteer to help on a subcommittee, and what we can kind of turn to some of the process that we used to help manage during the time of at an interim level, to sort of work on a couple of different work streams. First of all, determine we have an immediate deliverable from the previous item that we'll have to work on. Two is to assess and look at the scope of work and a transition plan that work with Tim to kind of line that out. And then three is bring back some options for interim management going forward, and a search for a long-term answer or hiring process. I think part of that too, the board might, as has been noted, want to consider sort of overall staffing and as well, because that's I think from the previous item, we're really going to have to think through what the right infrastructure, staffing, resources are going to be needed to run the district. So happy to help with that. The timing will be pretty quick next week.
Thank you, Trustee Desmond. Trustee Alcala? Oh,
Actually, it is me. I'm sorry. I keep the camera off right now, but it's largely because of internet issues. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Tim, wow. You have been a tremendous asset to this organization, and I'm really sorry to have heard the news that you're moving on, but I'm also want to extend my gratitude to you for everything you've put in to RD 900 and for all the guidance that you've provided all of us. And anyhow, I agree. I think Trustee Ledesma is someone who doesn't have a lot of time, but at the same time has a little bit of experience with this, and it's not his first rodeo. I don't, Tim, you're going to be missed, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Alcala?
Tim, I also want to thank you for your service and being the I was going to say youngest, the newest member on the board. I want to thank you for many calls I often made, not understanding things and the patience you had, and trying to bring me up to date on everything. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tim, how brokenhearted I am over this resignation. You've been a huge asset, and very grateful for, I think you put in like over 80 hours a week trying to maintain everything, losing sleep and making a lot of sacrifices. That's, just carrying on triple duty and learning a lot more about, the changes as we transitioned. I think you were the transition between our last RD board to this board. And, it's not easy. Those kind of transitions are extremely stressful. And so extremely grateful for you hanging in there, and appreciate you giving us a little bit of time for the next transition. And, it's just going to take a few months. I learned a lot from you every month, this, checking in a lot on what's going on in the city and trying to make sure you had all the resources and doing what we can to ensure that, the future is holding steady and strong, as you've established under your leadership with RD 900. So maintaining that legacy, Tim, so that we can continue to, continue to serve our city. And your contribution has meant a lot to our entire city for the protection. And that's our biggest risk is levee protection. And so you've maintained that very well, and very grateful for all you've done.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just hope to do all I can do to assist with passing the torch and assist with the next phase of this district. And
yeah, okay, thank you so much. And with that, I think what we'll need is approval to meet as a subcommittee, but also schedule a time to meet next week. Can everybody open your calendars and let's see what date that works for all of us? And Mr. Nevis, is there a preferable time? And
At your pleasure.
okay, thank you. Mr. Fabian, are you, and I'm going to make sure you're available as well.
I'll get my calendar out.
Thank you. Tuesday after 6 works, and Wednesday after 6 works as well, maybe 6:30. How does that work for everybody? Everybody's okay?
Maybe Tuesday, you said, what, at 6? Do we have enough time?
Tuesday after 6.
Tuesday after 6. Let's see, what doesn't you think that'll give us enough time?
And do we have a choice?
I guess not, but we might want to give
I think that I would shoot for Wednesday or Thursday.
let's
We're
And
gonna need,
I have to ask, are we picking a time here for an emergency meeting in order to discuss things, or are we picking a time?
I think
for
this is for
working
the
through?
emergency meeting to review a plan and options and at least a preliminary review. And if there's any action that the board may need to take, we'll need to hold it. And we may not even need it.
too.
Yeah, I think the only thing is
When-
I'm sorry, I think we will have, it's one of the deliverables is the corrective actions. We're gonna have that.
You have to have that.
So-
Yes, I see your thumbs up there.
Yeah, so, and then we can start at least have have some discussion for any final kind of employment issues or whatever. And I think, again, so yeah, we should plan on an emergency meeting then. And we might want to think about some closed session, Ralph, just in case there's any. Final.
Yes, we'll put together a special meeting agenda. I'll work with whoever wants to be the designee on the subcommittee to address any closed session issues, including we'll probably have a personnel closed session. And yeah, and we'll have an item for the corrective action plan. And then we will have an open item for consideration of the path forward for the interim management of the district.
Okay, so with that, we have all of those items for an action. If we can accept a motion to approve that.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Trustee Alcala moves and Trustee Ledesma seconds. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, President Guerrero.
Aye.
Trustee Orozco.
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma.
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Thank you, and that motion is approved. So next Thursday is the time at around 6 o'clock. And next is the item number 7, informational items, which is the general manager's report.
Yes. So getting into the nitty gritty of the day to day. Well, I have administrative services on here, which has changed since this report. So I won't get too much into that. That's I think it's been discussed thoroughly. Field operations. Yes.
I'm going to use the opportunity to sort of dig in a little bit, but
Yes.
The budget, which you have on your administrative services calendar, is there timing requirements tied to when we had the budget? Obviously, the fiscal year is coming up, but are there any other timing considerations that we need?
There's a timing consideration of you have to have a draft approved by June when you submit your assessment rolls with your assessment rate.
Okay.
And then there's a requirement that you have a quote unquote, you have a final, which we typically just do a single one, which is the final or draft. But anyways, the final date is September, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Flood operations. We've continued to work through clearing of trees, vegetation, debris, which would include large trees along the slopes. We concentrated as of lately along the Bridge District, which is an area that for a number of years was not really under the immediate attention of the district. It was one of these areas that was kind of back and forth on responsibilities. The last couple of years, DWR has taken a position that it is something we need to be more aware of. And so we have been proactive. So this is one of those steps. We've also, if any of you are familiar with the Southport Levee Improvement Project, at the tie-ins, there were some areas that were just beyond the scope of those projects that needed some additional clearing along the river levee. And we've been working through that. Precipitation lately has facilitated that, and we've gotten the vast majority of our herbicides down quite early. So we're already seeing very good results for bare ground treatments, our roads being clear of vegetation, broadleaf on our slopes, which is, a requirement to just have grass species on our slopes. That has already taken effect. You can see the results of it. So we're doing good there. The DWR spring levee inspections are scheduled for April 14th. Our superintendent is on board to administer those, follow along. I don't know how many of you know, but the way that their inspections work is the spring inspections are an advisory inspection. Nothing against you that they find is marked as an actionable item or anything like that. It's just a review of where you're at. It's the fall inspections where you have to have everything, your ducks in a row and everything correct. So that's the one that's the real meat and potatoes for everything. As far as internal drainage, this year we have no pumps or motors that are showing any issues. Everything's been serviced in the last 10 years with a typical service life of expectancy about 15 years on items. So we have no intentions of pulling anything at this point. So short of any catastrophes, we're good to go there. As far as pump stations, we also have, as part of the last phase of the Southport Industrial Park, we are finally getting underground power to one of our pump stations there at SIP. That's been about 20 years in the making. And so there's going to be, a couple miles of pole line along Marshall Road and along the back of houses that no longer needs to service anything in the very near future, because that is the only thing it goes to service. So that's pretty exciting as far as an operation standpoint. So we don't have to deal with downlines, power outages and such. Let's see, here I scroll a little too far. We've completed all of our annual inspections for our SPCC plants. Air quality management district permits and inspections have all gone through for the year. In good shape there. As far as storms, we're understanding that this storm may be the last one of the month, last significant one of the year. We've been holding all of our facilities at above winter, approaching summer levels, which can vary 1 to 2 feet. And we do this so that when we hit the spring, we have everything retained to the absolute maximum in order to try to combat this dropping water levels, as like was mentioned by the public earlier, which is a concern for us. So we're on that, and we're attempting to do our best to mitigate that issue before it happens. As far as district improvement projects, Drever city review is still ongoing. We're getting through it. Fire sprinkler system connections under review, but expecting those back quite soon. We have work scheduled to begin very soon. Getting through the last comments, we've had a couple of minor comments about structural calculations for the fencing and things of that nature. We've also had a couple change orders on that project, mostly to do with there was a bid option for removing all the debris that was in the building, which was executed so that they removed the debris. And then there was also the need to do some asbestos testing and some rather minor asbestos abatement for some of the drywall that was in there. In one of the offices that was performed already and is complete. So we should be good there, expecting final on those plan reviews very soon. As far as Blacker Canal, we've gotten word back. The U.S. Army Corps has no intention of a 404 permit. As such, Water Quality Control Board has no intention of issuing a 401 permit, or requiring one, I should say. So all we're going to need there would be a national permit to comply with best management practices for the project. We have our 30-day review that's been out since on the 24th, As of yet, we have not received any agency comments. What we have received and what was, it's in my report, but we had the members of the public speak earlier. They asked to have a field meet. It was only a day after issuing letters. I sent letters explaining roughly what the project was about and giving notice to anyone that was adjacent to the project. They asked to meet, met with about a half dozen of the neighbors along one small stretch of the project, who are represented by those presenting earlier this evening. They wanted to express their concerns for wildlife, for the visual impact that these gabion baskets with rock would have, while also expressing their support for the need for maintaining the structure of the canal. I have talked with our design engineer about a scope change, which would be very minor, switching to a different style of gabion basket that would use a mixed earth and rock fill with the liner. This would facilitate this, along with hydroseeding with the native grass species, would hopefully address some of these concerns of the public, and also facilitate any future, mitigation projects that the board wishes to, work with, or a future GM to offset the tree trimming, the removals, the impact that we're having in the initial reconstruction of the project. And then I don't know if on that particular item, I would ask if there's any comments on that.
Are there any comments among the trustees or questions? No? Okay.
Okay. And then moving on to Central Valley, nothing to report this time. I know we have that bill that would potentially change the language for the district, which I know would both change potential board structure, but also would allow for the integration of MA4, which is where Central Valley would come into play to bring that under our fold. But until such time that's passed, there's no conversations to be had. And then moving on to Wasafka projects, everything's coming to an end for final plans, specs. It's, as I understand it, going to kind of hit the shelf until funding is secured and start working on the groundwork and the geotechnical explorations for the next phase along the river. But this is where I open it up to Greg about anything he has.
Thanks, Tim. Good evening, President Grow and trustees. So Tim, the high level summary, that was it. We're wrapping up design on the yellow bypass piece. The design was submitted to the Corps, DWR, and the Wasafka team for review, final plans and specs. So once that review and comment is complete, as Tim mentioned, we'll put it on the shelf. The environmental part of it's going to take a little while longer. The Corps is going through some growing pains internally on how they deal with combined NEPA CEQA documents. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that while they figure that out on another project, which is much larger than ours. So we'll take the lessons learned from that, incorporate it into our project. And then we're probably looking to hopefully approve CEQA in the July timeframe of this year, and NEPA by the Corps, same timeframe. And then that wraps up that design, and then we wait for new start construction and construction funding so we can prepare to go to bid and go to construction next year. And then, as Tim mentioned, our next project after Yolo Bypass is along the Sacramento River north, essentially from the Barge Canal in the south up to the Sac Bypass in the north. So our plan is to begin geotechnical explorations, surveying, phase 1 environmental, variety of efforts that will help provide the foundation for beginning design on that next reach once we get the new start, or the Corps receives the new start in construction funding. So we're going to we'll be advancing work and advancing funds in partnership with the state. Eventually will count as work in kind, But we'll be out in front a little bit, as we have been, so we can keep that ball rolling. That's about it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Greg. Good report.
Thanks.
And is that it for all the WSAFE as far as 1 and 6? 1 and 6?
As far as project go, that's all I had. If you have any questions about that or anything else, be happy to answer.
Okay. All right. Is that it for your general manager report, Tim?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions among the trustees? No questions? Okay. That's a pretty comprehensive report, Mr. General Manager. Thank you so much. You've covered a lot of the aspects that are of interest to the entire city, and looking at the safety of with our rain, and anything you need next couple of days as it rains, that don't hesitate to.
I appreciate that. The mixed blessing of all this is, as much as this rain feels like rain, is it's still just filling things up at this point. We're still lacking in the rain department.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for being proactive in mitigating any compromise to what's happening around in the city and keeping everything safe. Appreciate all your work. A lot of projects all around the city that you're managing, a ton of projects. So good job in keeping track of all of them and giving us a report today. And with that, I don't think there's any public comment. I think there's been a public comment for any of the items in the last few. Yes, Trustee Alcala?
No, I was going to motion to adjourn.
We have item 7.2, trustee report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And any reports or updates? None? Okay, we'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I will say, trustee reports as the representative of this board to, this always confuses me, to WSAFCA. I attended WSAFCA this morning. Councilmember Alcala was also there, who did attendance, and nothing. We took in the financial report of WSAFCA. Also elected Tom Ramos as chair again, and congratulations to Councilmember Alcala now as vice chair of the board. So anyway, that's all I had to report. So, and Norma, you get to report that out at the next council meeting.
Thank you. I did want to mention that we are going with I believe it was called the budget allocation approach. Other counties have in terms of funding for.
Yeah, that's right. Thank
yes.
you. We had a hearing about how to care for conservation easements, ongoing operations and management. It was a workshop to discuss the approaches to take, whether an endowment or a budget allocation, and the board gave direction. There was no action, just gave direction that it would take a budget allocation. So
good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Alcala.
I'll second.
A dozen seconds. Mr. General Manager, for the final time, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your dedication and hard work over the years to our city.
Thank you, Martha. President Guerrero?
Aye.
Trustee Ledesma?
Aye.
Trustee Orozco?
Aye.
Trustee Alcala?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Everybody. Good night.
Good night.